Many years ago, a British Prime Minister said a week is a long time in politics. He is perhaps wrong because in the age in which we live, the Trumpian era, even 24 hours can be a very long time. Just about 24 hours ago, the US President launched an extraordinary attack on his European allies, describing them, many of them, as stupid. A few hours later, though, on Truth Social, Donald Trump said that he wasn't imposing tariffs on Europe, that NATO was still very much there, and that he would in fact have a framework for a deal on Greenland in place. Today, he's about to sign, we are told, the border peace on Gaza. There's also talk of a meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky and the possibility of some thaw in the ice between Russia and Ukraine. With Donald Trump, you never know what tomorrow brings. Therefore, to get a sense today, we are kicking off our special program with someone who's become an expert in predicting the future, even in these Trumpian times, these extraordinary times in which we live. Joining me now is Ian Bremmer, President of Eurasia Group, political scientist, author. Good to have you, Mr. Bremmer, on our special coverage. Give us your prediction for these extraordinary times. I know it's very tough. We had the World Economic Forum, President, where you were the other day, and he said we are living in the most challenging and complex time since 1945. Given all that, I still want you to put your thinking cap on and tell me what's going to happen over the next 12 months. What can we expect in this Trumpian era next?
Well, first, let's recognize that Trumpian era is what he wants you to call it, but it's not very accurate. The United States is the most powerful country in the world. I accept that. President Trump is not the most powerful leader. Xi Jinping is. Why is that? Xi Jinping doesn't have midterm elections. He doesn't have an independent judiciary. Trump isn't going to be there in 3 years. Xi Jinping is, right? And so Trump is getting all the headlines. He's getting all the media attention. Xi Jinping is actually in the better position as a leader. In many ways, Modi is in better position as a leader. Longer term, more consistent, allows Modi to push back more effectively than many of the European leaders, and we've seen that over the last few days. I guess one thing I would say, one thing that we've learned from these 3 days that we've wasted on Greenland, is that it turns out that even the Europeans are capable of hitting the Americans back effectively, because this was Taco, right? This was Trump chickening out. He said he was going to own Greenland. He threatened them. There were going to be tariffs on all of the countries by February 1 that supported Denmark. He backed off of all of those things, and he got nothing for it. Why? Why did that happen? Well, number one, because the Europeans were prepared to actually put reciprocal tariffs in place and use the anti-coercion instrument. Number two, because it turns out that there are issues back in the United States where there are real divides, including among Republicans. And this is one of them. In fact, Greenland was even worse for Trump than the Epstein files in polling. Minus 38 on Epstein, minus 40 on Greenland. And the Republicans were telling him, we will not support you on this issue. So he had to back down, especially when the markets tanked. And then number three, and this is the most important thing. India is a partner and a friend of the United States. The Europeans are allies of the United States. That is different from being a partner and friend of President Trump. And when we see policies that are being advanced by Trump that are in his interest, but not in the interest of the United States, that has to be mentioned. And owning Greenland is not in the interest of the United States. Strategic cooperation, more security with the Europeans, sure. Owning Greenland was an ego issue for President Trump personally, and that's why he failed. And that's an important thing for us to understand.
So was Greenland then a distraction possibly from the Epstein files? And are you saying, therefore, relations with between the US and Europe will return back to some kind of normalcy, if at all that word can be used?
No, what I'm saying is that Greenland was an opportunity for the Europeans to see that even divided with 27 countries and not a single state, it's not like India, it's not like China, that they were capable of drawing a red line and backing Trump down. But they have learned, because, I mean, let's face it, if it wasn't for Greenland, we would have been talking about the border peace a lot more this week. And while Trump was pushing and treating the Europeans with contempt on Greenland, he was also inviting the Russian president and the Belarusian president to join the Board of Peace. The countries that the Americans and the Europeans are at war with, he didn't even discuss it with the Europeans in advance. So the Europeans do not feel like they can trust President Trump. And that is leading them to hedge with other countries. You know, President Trump has said that he wants credit for these 8 wars that he has ended. But he deserves credit for the EU-Mercosur trade deal. That trade deal was not going to happen until Trump became president and started pushing the Europeans and the Donroe Doctrine South Americans around. And then they said, we need to do this deal. Mark Carney went to Beijing and he rebuilt a relationship with Xi Jinping that had been in the toilet between Canada and China. Donald Trump deserves credit for that. I mean, if it wasn't for that, it wouldn't have happened. And we need to say that Trump deserves credit for that.
So Trump is actually enabling countries to sort of diversify and de-risk away from America. But I just want to, we'll come to the border peace in a moment, Mr. Bremmer. Is the moral of the story of the last 3 days that if you push back against Trump, the big bully, Trump chickens out? Because there could be a lesson there for India as well. We've got a trade deal with the United States that is still hanging fire, that you don't cede to Donald Trump or to play to his ego. I mean, there are 2 ways to deal, it appears, with Donald Trump. Either you play with his ego, as the Pakistanis are doing, virtually suggesting that there's a red carpet rolled out for Donald Trump, or do you go the way certain other countries are doing? You mentioned Canada there. Mark Carney was very clear that the middle powers have to come together at a moment like this and stop this coercion that America, without naming them, seems to be imposing on the world.
What I'm saying is that there is a strategy to push back on Trump and succeed. But you have to have a leader that is willing and capable of actually executing on that policy. The obvious example of that is Xi Jinping, right? I mean, Trump hit the Chinese hard with tariffs, Liberation Day. China did not pick up the phone. Instead, they retaliated, including on critical minerals, and basically showed the Americans, without panicking, they showed the Americans, we will shut down your industries if you don't actually treat us with respect. What's happening now? Trump meets with Xi Jinping in Busan. He calls it a G2. He gives parity, treats China as a peer, and now he's traveling to Beijing. It's going to be a much more successful meeting. So Xi Jinping was in the position that he could make that happen. Now, Mark Carney thinks that he is in a stronger position, and that's why he's pushing Trump around. But I saw in that speech that Trump gave here at Davos, he called out Mark Carney a number of times, and he said, you know, we're not going to tolerate that. This is a risk that Mark Carney is taking. I happen to think that it is a politically savvy move for him as prime minister, but it is possible that that risk will not pay off. It is possible that Canada will end up in a recession because of that risk and because of Trump hitting back. Because Canada is not only a much smaller economy, but it's very dependent on the U.S. economy. Now, India, you've got a country that is growing by over 7%. You've got a leader that's very popular with, yes, a coalition government, but he's done very well in local elections recently, Bihar and the rest, right? And not only that, but the Indians are not that dependent on trade with the United States. India is useful to the U.S. in its strategic relationship as a hedge against China with the Quad and the rest. So I believe that Modi is in one of the stronger positions to push back against Trump of most leaders in the world.
Let's, on that moment, come to what is the latest Trump headline, the border peace, where he's effectively asking countries to put $1 billion to become part of this board.
No, that's not exactly true. That's not exactly true.
Frozen asset of $1 billion.
No. You can join,
yes,
no money, but if you want to be a permanent member, as opposed to 3 years, then you have to pay $1 billion. Yes. No one has contributed that $1 billion, to my knowledge, that has accepted membership so far. I just want to clarify that.
So what should countries like India, who've been offered to join the border peace, in your view, do? Do you join hands with Donald Trump, knowing that he could just change his mind in a month from now and move in an entirely different direction? To what extent do countries like India, and it comes back to the point of pushback, do we indulge Donald Trump when he comes back with an idea like the border peace on Gaza? Is it an idea worth pursuing in the first instance?
The head of the World Bank is on it. You've got the Emiratis that have said that they're joining. The Israelis are joining. The Russians have not said they're joining yet, even though Trump said that Putin said he was going to join. Frequently, there's a gap there. But the French have said they won't. The Germans couldn't because the Constitution actually forbids it. So I think that this is a less important question than how India handles their trade deal with the United States. This is not a matter of the Indians offering $1 billion. This is not a permanent commitment. If it doesn't go well, the Indians could step away, just as the Italians joined Belt and Road as a G7 country and then pulled right out. What I think is important is that this Board of Peace should not be used to undermine multilateralism of the United Nations, should not be used to break institutions that are important globally and that India benefits from and that India participates in. And that if India decides to participate, they need to make sure that that participation is constructive and does not foster a long-term development that will make everyone worse off.
Let's look again at predictions. We are in Europe at the moment. Ukraine dominates a lot of the conversation. We still don't know at this moment while we are speaking whether President Zelensky will meet Donald Trump here in Davos. Do you believe that the war could end in the next 12 months, or are we again heading potentially for a prolonged conflict that's already gone on really for 4 years?
4 years. Almost 4 years. It doesn't look like it's ending soon. President Trump understands he wants a ceasefire, but he has more leverage over Ukraine, even though Ukraine is the side that the United States is fighting with because the Ukrainians are weak. So he believes he can force Zelensky to capitulate. And we've seen that with the critical minerals deal. We've seen that with accepting a ceasefire with no preconditions. We've seen that with a willingness maybe even to withdraw from some of the presently Ukrainian-occupied territories of Ukraine to make them demilitarized. We've seen that with even Zelensky willing to talk about elections while the war is going on. All of those are things he would not do under Biden, but Trump has forced him to. How has Putin conceded on anything? What has Putin offered? The United States has put a little bit of pressure on, not like Ukraine. They put a little pressure on, but Putin sees, in his view, that holding on longer and forcing the weaker Ukrainians to continue to capitulate while driving wedges between the United States and Europe and NATO is a stronger play for Russia. He believes they can wait the Ukrainians, the Americans, the Europeans out. And so far, that's been a smart move on his part.
So you're saying no immediate end to the conflict in Ukraine. Today, the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, said the world is seeing the final days of Iran's regime. Predictions for that part of the world. Do you see the Iranian regime being toppled in the near future? I mean, it almost seemed that because Trump did what he did in Venezuela, where he effected a regime change, not a regime change, removed the president, removed an individual, and has allowed his vice president to continue, and spoke more of oil than democracy in Venezuela, that he could do the same in Iran. Yeah. Iran is clearly not Venezuela. How do you see Iran playing out?
So I have to say, Chancellor Merz first said, it was about a week and a half ago, he said that he thought that the Iranian regime was on its last days or weeks.
Yes.
I was quite startled by that. There's no intelligence on the ground that implies that. I mean, the demonstrations at that point were already getting much weaker. The Iranian regime is willing and capable to repress with great force. And there were no breaches, no breaks within the regime that I could see, either within the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Basij, the paramilitary groups that carry out most of the actual repression. I didn't see it with the state media, not with telecommunications and the internet that was all shut down. I didn't see it. And so, yes, the United States might well engage in further strikes against Iran, but I just saw Steve Witkoff, the principal negotiator on many of these issues, came out and he said, look, even after the Iranians have killed thousands of civilians, he said, well, maybe we can negotiate with them. If they're willing to negotiate, maybe we can get something done. So I don't see, I'd love to be wrong, but I don't think that in the near term, this Islamic Republic is about to collapse.
So in conclusion, the big worldview, are we heading, as the German Chancellor again says, it's the end of the old order? As we knew it, there is a new world order there. If there is one, what is the shape of this new world order? I keep hearing words like multipolar world order, G2, China and America. What is this new world order that's emerging out of this chaos?
So what I called it 15 years ago was a G0 world. I said that as the
G0 word.
yes,
Nice word. What
does
that mean?
It means, well, as the United States withdraws from leadership of its own global order with its allies, that no other country or group of countries are capable and willing of replacing the United States. So you will have a period of time of a geopolitical recession, a bust cycle, where it is messy, where it is chaotic, where there is a lot of impunity. And I see emerging three very different kinds of global orders. In the economic space, the world is already very multipolar. The Europeans are showing that with their trade competencies. The Chinese showed this to Trump very clearly. The U.S. is clearly a major pole. India is emerging very rapidly. It's multipolar. But in the security order, it's still very unipolar. If the United States wants to do something, very few people can stop them. No one else can project power like that globally. And then in the technology space, actually China dominates it as a government, but in the West it's dominated not by governments, it's dominated by companies. It's becoming increasingly technopolar. And so these three emerging orders are kind of jostling side by side in different spaces at the same time.
It's fascinating you said that about technopolar world, because you stirred a bit of a controversy by suggesting that India was a laggard when it came to AI, which is the other big buzzword here in Davos.
That's not what I said.
It was suggested. I mean, that's what we heard, that Ian Bremmer said India is a laggard when it comes to AI technology.
Ian Bremmer said that there are two countries that are leading in the world on AI, the United States and China. This is obvious. It is a fact. It is true. India is doing quite well compared to its economic status and relative power as developing AI, especially human capacity, talent, and increasingly investment, even legal framework. But you cannot compare the ability to attract capital and impact outcomes of India to the US and China today in AI.
So therefore, in this world of various polarities, economic, political, and technology, net, where does India stand? How should India see itself as we go ahead to 2026? What do you see India's immediate 12-month timeline? I'm not even looking beyond 12 months.
As you said at the beginning, India is a middle power. It's very important. It's stable. And the fact that India has leadership that is more consolidated and popular than leadership in almost any other democracy around the world, only Mexico really has similarity among larger countries, means that India is capable of pushing back in ways that other countries are not. That helps India. Consistent leadership over time is something that is lacking in the world today. India looks very stable. It's a great growth story. But still, the Americans and the Chinese are dominating most of the conversations. And when you talk to the big players here, who are like allocating capital all over the world, and they say, we don't trust the United States so much anymore, what are they talking about? Reallocating to China, because China has the market size and China has the technology. India is not in that conversation at this point.
Which is interesting, because someone told me that Donald Trump decided that he wanted to make America great again. He's ended up making China looking great again.
There's no question that Donald Trump is making China great again. Yes, that's true.
Okay.
Yes.
Ian Bremmer, for giving us this wonderful worldview in 20 minutes about where we stand amidst all the chaos around us. I appreciate you breaking it down for us so succinctly. Thank you very much. Good to have you here on India Today at the Davos Summit. Thank you. Ian Bremmer at the World Economic Forum, one of the finest minds that you can get when it comes to breaking down the world order as it stands. Rajdeep Sardesai in Davos for India Today.